A pregnant woman is kidnapped and publicly humiliated while her mother watches everything live. Tied to a tree under the scorching sun, she fights for her life and her child's. What they don't know is that justice is closer than they imagine. The January heat in Chesterfield, in rural Derbyshire, was unforgiving that afternoon. Mary Ann Smith adjusted her loose blouse over her 7-month belly and sighed, feeling the weight of the baby and the exhaustion that had been consuming her in recent weeks. False contractions had started the night before, leaving her even more drained. She looked out the window of the small house she shared with her husband, Raphael Andrews, and saw the silver pickup truck parked outside. Raphael's visit in the middle of a weekday afternoon was strange, as he usually worked late at the mechanic's garage. The door burst open with a bang that made her jump. Raphael entered, with an expression Mary Ann couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger, it wasn't worry, it was something colder, more calculated. Behind him came Sabrina Carter, the woman who worked at the garage's reception. Mary Ann felt her heart quicken. In recent months she had noticed subtle changes in Raphael's behavior, the messages he hid, the frequent lateness, the growing distance. But seeing Sabrina there inside her house, crossing the threshold as if she had every right, was like a punch to the gut. "Raphael, what's going on?" Mary Ann asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the tremor she felt inside. "Why is she here?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he exchanged a glance with Sabrina, who had a smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. It was a smile of triumph, of someone who had finally gotten what she wanted. Mary Ann felt a chill run down her spine. "You're coming with us," Raphael finally said, his voice devoid of emotion. "There's no point in making a scene." Mary Ann instinctively recoiled, her hands protectively over her belly. "Going where? I'm not going anywhere with you." "Raphael, you're scaring me. What's happening?" Sabrina stepped forward, arms crossed. "Stop pretending you don't know anything, Mary Ann. Did you think you could hold on to Raphael forever with that belly? Did you think he'd keep believing your lies?" "Lies? What are you talking about?" Mary Ann looked desperately at Raphael, searching for any trace of the man she had loved, with whom she had planned a family. But all she saw was indifference. "The baby isn't mine," Raphael declared coldly. "I know you cheated on me and now you're going to pay for it." The words were so absurd that Mary Ann almost laughed, but the laughter died in her throat when she saw he was serious. "It's not yours? Raphael, how can you say that? Of course it's yours. We've been together for 4 years. I've never ever cheated on you." "Liar!" Sabrina spat, taking another step forward. "You've deceived him all this time, but now it's over. Now everyone will know who you really are." Before Mary Ann could process what was happening, Raphael grabbed her arm tightly. She tried to break free, but he was much stronger. "Let's go," he said, dragging her towards the door. Sabrina followed right behind, holding Mary Ann's purse and the cell phone that was on the table. "Raphael, please, let me go. You're hurting me." Mary Ann tried to resist, but every abrupt movement made her body protest. She was pregnant, vulnerable, and fear began to turn into panic. "Where are you taking me? Someone help me." But there was no one on the street at that hour. Neighbors were at work or inside their homes, protected from the scorching heat. Raphael opened the back door of the pickup truck and practically threw Mary Ann inside. She hit her shoulder against the seat and groaned in pain, her hands still protecting her belly. Sabrina got in beside her, blocking any chance of escape. "If you try anything, you'll regret it," Sabrina warned, her eyes shining with an animosity Mary Ann had never seen directed at her. Her breathing was accelerated, her heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst from her chest. Raphael got into the driver's seat and started the engine. The pickup truck began to move, leaving the town towards the countryside. Mary Ann looked out the window, trying to mentally record the route, but tears blurred her vision. She couldn't understand what was happening. How had her marriage reached this point? How was the man who had sworn to love and protect her now kidnapping her with the help of his mistress? "Please, at least tell me what you want from me," Mary Ann pleaded, her voice broken. "I haven't done anything wrong. The baby is yours, Raphael. I swear to God it's yours." "Shut up," he snarled from the front seat, without even looking back. His hands were tense on the steering wheel, his knuckles white from gripping it so tightly. The pickup truck continued along increasingly isolated dirt roads. Marianne vaguely recognized the area. They were the pine forests on the outskirts of Chesterfield, areas used for reforestation and practically deserted during the day. Her panic intensified. What did they plan to do with her there, far from everything and everyone? After what felt like an eternity, Raphael finally stopped the pickup truck in a clearing surrounded by tall trees. The sun was directly overhead, and the heat outside must have been unbearable. He got out of the vehicle and opened the back door. "Get out," he ordered. Marianne hesitated, but Sabrina pushed her forcefully. She stumbled out, almost falling to her knees on the dry, cracked earth. The heat hit her like a physical wave, knocking the air from her lungs. She was already sweating, her throat feeling dry. "Raphael, please," she said, tears now streaming freely. "Whatever you think I did, we can talk. But not here, not like this. Think of the baby, for God's sake." He ignored her pleas. With mechanical movements, he took a rope from the bed of the pickup truck. Marianne's heart froze. "No," she whispered, backing away. "No, Raphael, don't do this." But he was already coming towards her, and Sabrina blocked any escape route. Marianne tried to run, but her weak legs and the weight of her pregnancy made her slow. Raphael reached her in seconds, holding her arms with brutal force as he dragged her to a sturdy tree in the center of the clearing. Her hands scraped against the rough bark of the tree as he forced her back against the trunk. The rope chafed her skin as he tied her wrists, tightening it enough to leave marks. Marianne was sobbing now, pleading, but her words seemed to have no effect. When Raphael finished tying her, he stepped back, looking at his work with grim satisfaction. Sabrina approached, taking her cell phone from her pocket. Marianne watched with growing horror as she set up a live stream. "What are you doing?" Marianne asked, her voice hoarse. "Sabrina, please don't do this." "Everyone needs to know who you really are," Sabrina replied, her finger hovering over the Start Broadcast button. "A traitor, a liar. And when we're done here, no one will feel sorry for you." And then she pressed the button. The camera's red light began to flash, indicating they were live. Marianne felt a new wave of despair. It wasn't just what they were doing to her there, isolated and defenseless. Now the entire world could witness her humiliation. The live stream had begun, and Sabrina held the cell phone with a steady hand. The camera focused directly on Marianne tied to the tree. Sweat was already starting to stream down Marianne's forehead, dampening her brown hair. The heat was suffocating, and her mouth felt increasingly dry. Thirst was beginning to become physical torture. "Look who's here," Sabrina began with a falsely cheerful voice, turning the camera to herself before refocusing on Marianne. "This is Marianne Smith, the woman who deceived her husband for months, making him believe the child she's carrying is his. But the truth always comes out, doesn't it?" "That's not true," Marianne managed to say, though her voice came out weak and trembling. "Raphael, please, you know that's not true. How can you believe her?" Raphael remained a few steps behind Sabrina, arms crossed, his face a mask of indifference. But Marianne knew that man, or at least she thought she did. She saw something in his eyes, a hesitation perhaps, a shadow of doubt. But when Sabrina looked at him, expecting support, Raphael hardened his expression. "She's lying," he said, but his voice didn't have the same conviction as before. "Sabrina showed me the proof." "Proof? What proof?" Marianne felt a mix of despair and anger growing inside her. "What proof, Raphael? Fake messages? Manipulated photos? How can you believe her instead of me, your wife?" Sabrina moved closer, the cell phone almost in Marianne's face. Comments began to appear on the live stream screen. Some were supportive of Mary, and others cruel and judgmental. The number of people watching grew every second. 50, 100, 200 people. "Water," Marianne pleaded, ignoring the camera. "Please give me water. It's too hot, and the baby needs it." She felt a mild contraction, not yet painful, but a worrying reminder of her condition. The stress and heat were affecting her body, and she feared the consequences. Sabrina let out a cruel laugh. "Water? You think you deserve water after everything you've done? You destroyed Raphael's life and now you want compassion? Marianne closed her eyes, trying to block out. Sabrina's voice trying to focus on breathing. She needed to stay calm for the baby. She needed to find a way out of that situation. But tied up as she was, under the scorching sun, without water, without help, she felt completely helpless. Meanwhile, miles away, in a modest house in Stafford, Staffordshire, Mrs. Alice Taylor was preparing lunch when her cell phone vibrated. She had just finished washing the dishes and was thinking of calling her daughter, as she did every day. Mary Ann always answered, always with that sweet voice talking about her pregnancy, about the preparations for the baby, about her dreams for the future. Mrs. Alice Taylor picked up her cell phone and saw a strange notification. A church friend had sent a link with several urgent messages. Alice, isn't that Mary Ann? My God, what's happening to her? Mrs. Alice Taylor's heart began to beat faster. With trembling fingers, she clicked on the link. The screen loaded, showing a live stream, and what she saw made her blood run cold. There was her daughter, her Mary Ann, tied to a tree, her face red from heat and tears, her large belly evident even from a distance. Mary Ann! Mrs. Alice Taylor screamed at the phone screen, as if her daughter could hear her. Her fingers squeezed the device so hard they began to ache. What are they doing to you, my daughter? She recognized Raphael in the video, although he was partially out of focus. And there was another woman, one Mrs. Alice Taylor had never seen before, holding the camera and saying horrible things about Mary Ann. Betrayal? Lies? None of it made sense. Mary Ann was incapable of betraying Raphael. She loved that man, had given up so much to build a life. With him. Mrs. Alice Taylor's hands trembled so much she almost dropped the phone. She needed to act, needed to do something. With her mind racing, she called the police, but the words came out jumbled, confused. A live stream. My daughter is tied up, Chesterfield, please do something. The operator tried to calm her, asking for details, addresses, but Mrs. Alice Taylor didn't know exactly where Mary Ann was. All she saw was forest, trees, and her daughter in danger. She sent the live stream link to the police and without a second thought grabbed her car keys. No, the operator said on the other end of the line. You shouldn't go alone, it's dangerous, our team is already on its way. But Mrs. Alice Taylor was already at the door. That was her daughter, her girl, and she wasn't going to stand by waiting while Mary Ann suffered. The journey from Stafford to Chesterfield would take over 4 hours, but she'd do it in 3 if necessary. Back in the clearing, Mary Ann struggled to maintain consciousness. The heat was becoming unbearable, and she felt dizzy. Contractions were coming more frequently now, still mild but worrying. She knew that stress could trigger premature labor, and there, without medical help, the consequences could be terrible. Sabrina continued narrating for the camera, savoring every moment of humiliation. You see, everyone? This is the consequence of being a liar, of deceiving a good man. She thought she'd get away with it, but not on our watch. Justice must be served. Justice? Mary Ann opened her eyes, her vision blurred. You call this justice? Tying me here, pregnant, under the sun? This is cruelty, Sabrina. This is madness. Raphael finally moved, approaching Sabrina. She rested her head on his shoulder, a gesture of intimacy that made Mary Ann's heart break even more. How hadn't she seen it? How hadn't she realized she was losing her husband to that woman? Or perhaps she had known, deep down, but refused to admit it. Comments on the live stream were divided. Some asked them to release Mary Ann, saying it was inhumane. Others said she deserved it, that traitors always paid the price. The internet was a cruel and hasty jury, judging without knowing the whole story. Mary Ann felt another contraction, this one a little stronger. She moaned softly, trying to shift position, but the rope held her fast. Her hands were numb from lack of circulation, and the skin on her wrists was raw where the rope chafed. Raphael, she tried once more, gathering all the energy she still had. Think of our child. No matter what you believe now, he is innocent. Don't let him suffer because of this, please. For the first time, Raphael seemed to genuinely waver. He looked at Mary Ann's belly, and something crossed his face. Pain? Regret? But Sabrina noticed the hesitation and quickly intervened. Don't fall for it, Raphael, she said firmly, still holding the cell. Phone. She's trying to manipulate you again, as she always has. You need to be strong. We did this so she would confess the truth, remember? Mary Ann then realized what their plan was, or at least part of it. They wanted her to confess to a betrayal that never happened, to admit that the baby wasn't Raphael's. They wanted her to publicly humiliate herself, to destroy her own reputation. But she would never do that, because it would be a lie. The baby was Raphael's, she was absolutely certain. I won't confess to something I didn't do, Mary Ann said, trying to sound firm despite her weakness. You can leave me here as long as you want, but I won't lie. Sabrina smiled, a cold smile. Then you'll stay there until you change your mind. Mrs. Alice Taylor drove along the A6117 road with her foot heavier than ever. Her small old car vibrated with speed, but she didn't slow down. On the passenger seat, her cell phone was fixed in its holder, showing the live stream that remained active. She didn't want to watch. Every second was torture seeing her daughter in that state, but she also couldn't look away. She needed to know that Mary Ann was still okay, still conscious. The phone rang. It was the detective from the Chesterfield police who had taken over the case. Mrs. Taylor, we've managed to track the approximate location of the broadcast through the internet signal. We're heading to the area now. How long? Mrs. Alice Taylor asked, her voice broken. How long until you reach her? About 20 minutes, maybe less. But, madam, I need you not to go there. The situation could be dangerous. 20 minutes! Mrs. Alice Taylor felt a tightness in her chest. 20 minutes. Could be an eternity for someone pregnant, dehydrated, and under that scorching sun. I'm coming, detective. I'll be there in less than 2 hours, and nothing will stop me from finding my daughter. She hung up before he could protest. Her eyes briefly returned to the phone screen. Mary Ann's head had fallen forward, and Mrs. Alice Taylor felt panic. Lift your head, daughter, she whispered. Hold on tight. Mum's coming to get you. In the clearing, Mary Ann fought against exhaustion. She had lost track of time. How long had she been there? An hour, 2. The sun seemed to have intensified, burning her exposed skin. Her mouth was so dry that each breath seemed to scratch her throat. Contractions were coming with more regularity now, and she knew she needed urgent medical help. Sabrina still held the cell phone, although her initial animation had somewhat dwindled. She read the comments aloud, selectively choosing those that supported her actions. Look, people agree with me. User 7788 says, traitors deserve to suffer. And here, Paul Smith commented, she dug her own grave. But there were other comments that Sabrina purposely ignored, people asking for an ambulance, saying it was inhumane, that the pregnant woman was in danger. Some even threatened to call the police if Sabrina didn't stop immediately. Raphael was sitting in the bed of the pickup truck, away from the center of the action. His hands trembled slightly, and he hid them between his legs. He watched Mary Ann, saw her suffering, and a part of him, a part he tried to suppress, felt remorse. When Sabrina had shown him the messages supposedly exchanged between Mary Ann and another man, he had been furious. But now, seeing his wife like that, he began to question if he had been too rash. Sabrina, he called hesitantly, I think that's enough. She's not well. Sabrina turned sharply to him, her eyes flashing. It's enough when I say it's enough. She still hasn't confessed. She still hasn't admitted what she did to you, to us. Raphael ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. But look at her, Sabrina. She's 7 months pregnant. If something happens to her or the baby, we'll be held accountable for it. This could lead to prison time. And who do you think will end up in prison? Sabrina approached him, lowering her voice, but the cell phone still captured parts of the conversation. It was your messages with her that I intercepted. It was your accusations. I wasn't the one who tied her there. It was you. That's not true, Raphael protested, but his voice was weak. Sabrina had planned everything, convinced him it was the only way to make Mary Ann confess. But he had participated. He had brought Mary Ann there. He had tied her with his own hands. The guilt was his too, and he knew it. Mary Ann raised her head with effort. She could hear the argument between the two of them, although the voices reached her distorted, as if from far away. Raphael was having doubts. She saw it in his eyes, heard it in the hesitation of his voice. Perhaps there was still a chance to reach him. "Raphael!" she called, her voice hoarse and weak. "Please remember us. Remember when we met, everything we planned together. Do you really believe I would do this to you? That I would destroy our family like this?" Raphael looked at her, and for a moment, just a brief moment, Mary Ann saw the man she loved. The man who proposed to her on a beach in Brighton, who cried with joy when they discovered the pregnancy, who spent hours talking to her belly, telling stories to the baby yet to come. Where had that man gone? "Don't listen to her, Raphael," Sabrina quickly intervened. "She's a master manipulator. That's how she deceived you all this time." Mary Ann closed her eyes, tears burning. She remembered the happy moments, Sunday afternoons having barbecues with friends, nights watching movies cuddled on the sofa, plans for the baby's room. They had chosen the names together. David, if it was a boy; Julia, if it was a girl. Raphael had bought a wooden crib and spent weeks assembling and decorating it. Where had the rupture begun? When Sabrina entered their lives? She opened her eyes and looked directly at the camera Sabrina still held. "My name is Mary Ann Smith," she said, gathering all the strength she still had. "I am 7 months pregnant with my husband, Raphael Andrews's child. I have never cheated on him, never lied to him, and if anyone is watching this, please call for help. Please, save my baby." Her voice failed at the end, and she felt another contraction, stronger this time. She moaned, her body bending as much as the rope allowed. The pain radiated through her back and abdomen, and she was afraid of what it meant. Sabrina lowered the cell phone for an instant, seeming disturbed for the first time. Mary Ann's confession, so direct and desperate, had touched something, but she shook her head, casting off any trace of compassion. "Good acting," she said dryly, "but we both know the truth." However, comments on the live stream were becoming more critical. More people were asking them to stop, saying it was absurd. Some had already reported the video, and there were rumors in the comments that the police were already on their way. Raphael saw a specific comment that read, "You're all going to jail for this, you bunch of lunatics." His blood ran cold. Jail. He had never thought of jail. Sabrina had painted everything as a way to get justice, to expose Mary Ann for the supposed betrayal. But what if she hadn't cheated? What if Sabrina had fabricated everything? "Sabrina," he said, his voice firmer now. "Show me the messages again, the proof you gave me." Sabrina blinked, surprised. "Why? You've already seen them?" "I want to see them again," Raphael insisted, standing up. "Now." Sabrina hesitated. She knew that the messages she had fabricated would not withstand very detailed scrutiny. They had been created in a hurry, screenshots of fake conversations. If Raphael started to question, if he started to truly investigate, the whole charade would crumble. "Later," she said hastily. "First, let's finish here." Raphael frowned. "No, now. If you're so sure Mary Ann cheated on me, there's no problem showing them again, is there?" The tension between them grew. Mary Ann watched, confused and hopeful. Raphael was starting to doubt. Perhaps all was not lost. Perhaps he would realize he was being manipulated. Meanwhile, Mrs. Alice Taylor overtook a truck on the motorway, her heart racing. She looked at her cell phone and saw that over 1,000 people were now watching the live stream. Over 1,000 witnesses to her daughter's suffering. The absurdity of the situation made her furious and desperate at the same time. How was this possible? How had no one come to help yet? Her phone rang again. It was the police. "Mrs. Taylor, we've located the exact spot. We're 15 minutes away. Please inform us when you arrive in the area. Do not approach alone." 15 minutes, Mrs. Alice Taylor thought, and she was still an hour and a half away. Would it be enough? Would the police arrive in time? What if something happened to Mary Ann before then? She pressed the accelerator even harder, praying silently, begging for protection, for strength. "Hold on, my daughter," she murmured. "Just hold on a little longer." The sound of sirens cut through the stifling afternoon air. Raphael and Sabrina exchanged glances, panic seizing them both. The live stream was still active, and Sabrina quickly tried to end it. But her fingers trembled so much that she dropped the cell phone onto the dirt. The cracked screen continued broadcasting, capturing the moment two police cars emerged from among the trees, kicking up dust. The officers got out of their vehicles with their hands on their weapons, but did not draw them. The scene before them was as bizarre as it was disturbing. A pregnant woman tied to a tree, visibly weakened, a man standing near the pickup truck, and a woman on the ground trying to pick up a cell phone. "Police, hands where I can." "See them?" shouted Sergeant Oliver, a man in his 50s with vast experience in crisis situations. "Nobody move." Raphael immediately raised his hands, his face pale. Sabrina, more slowly, also obeyed, but her gaze was defiant. She still believed on some distorted level that she was right, that what they did was justified. One of the officers, Officer Mendez, immediately ran to Mary Ann. "Madam, can you hear me? We're going to get you out of there, okay?" Mary Ann tried to respond, but her throat was so dry that only a hoarse sound came out. She nodded slightly. Tears, falling again. Help was here. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of suffering, someone had come to save her. Officer Mendez began working on the knots of the rope, which were tight and difficult to undo. Meanwhile, another officer brought water. "Slowly," he said, helping Mary Ann drink small sips. "Don't drink too fast." The cool water against her cracked lips was like a miracle. Mary Ann drank eagerly, feeling life return to her body little by little. When they finally managed to untie her, her legs gave way. Officer Mendez supported her before she fell, helping her sit in the shade. "My baby," were Mary Ann's first coherent words. "Please, is my baby okay?" "We've already called an ambulance. It's on its way," the officer assured her. "You'll be examined. Everything will be fine." Sergeant Oliver approached Raphael and Sabrina. "You two against the patrol car, now." "We didn't do anything wrong," Sabrina said, her voice rising. "She cheated on her husband. We just wanted her to confess. That's why we did this. It was justice." "Justice?" The sergeant looked at her as if she had completely lost her mind. "You tied a pregnant woman to a tree, under the scorching sun, and live-streamed it. Do you have any idea of the gravity of what you've done?" Raphael was silent, his hands still raised, his eyes fixed on Mary Ann. She was being supported by the officers, drinking water, visibly weakened. What had he done? How had he let things get to this point? Sabrina had shown him messages, had told him Mary Ann was cheating on him, but what if it was all a lie? What if he had destroyed his family for nothing? "She tied herself up," Sabrina tried again, her voice almost hysterical now. "She did this to incriminate us, to make us look like the villains." Sergeant Oliver picked up the cell phone that had fallen to the ground. The cracked screen still showed the live stream, which had been interrupted, but everything was recorded. "We have over 1,000 witnesses who watched you do this," he said calmly. "And I'm sure many people recorded it before the broadcast ended. You won't get away with this." Sabrina paled. Reality was finally beginning to penetrate her distorted mind. She looked at Raphael, expecting support, but he wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on Mary Ann. Both were handcuffed and placed in separate patrol cars. Raphael didn't resist, moving like an automaton. Sabrina, on the other hand, screamed, saying it was unfair, that Mary Ann was the real criminal. But her words fell on deaf ears. The ambulance arrived about 10 minutes later. Paramedics immediately began examining Mary Ann, checking her vital signs and those of the baby. Her heartbeat was accelerated, blood pressure was low, and she showed clear signs of severe dehydration. But the most worrying were the regular contractions. "We need to take her to the hospital immediately," said the paramedic, a young woman named Fiona. "She may be going into premature labor." Mary Ann held Fiona's arm. "My mum," she whispered. "My mum is coming. Mrs. Alice Taylor. Please tell her." "We'll tell her," Fiona promised, helping to place Mary Ann on the stretcher. "But right now the priority is to take care of you and your baby." As the ambulance departed towards Chesterfield General Hospital, sirens echoing through the forest, Mrs. Alice Taylor was still on the road. Her phone rang again, and she answered quickly. "Mrs. Taylor, this is Sergeant Oliver. We found your daughter. She's on her way to Chesterfield General Hospital now." Mrs. Alice Taylor felt such immense relief that she started to cry. "Is she okay? And the baby?" "She's dehydrated and having contractions, but she's conscious and being well cared for. It looks like everything will be fine. As for you, where are you now?" "I'm passing through Derby. I should reach Chesterfield in about an hour." "Drive carefully, madam. Your daughter will need you in one piece when you arrive." Mrs. Alice Taylor agreed but didn't slow down. An hour still seemed like a long time. She wanted to be there. Hold her daughter's hand, say that everything would be all right now, that the nightmare was over. At the hospital, Mary Ann was taken directly to the obstetric emergency room. Doctors and nurses surrounded her, administered IV fluids for rehydration, and monitored the baby with an ultrasound. To everyone's great relief, the baby's heart was beating strong and regularly. The contractions began to subside with the administration of appropriate medication. Dr. Carla Stone, the obstetrician on duty, examined Mary Ann carefully. "You are very strong," she said gently. "Both you and your baby are fighters. We'll keep you under observation, but it looks like we've managed to stabilize the situation." "The baby?" Mary Ann managed to ask, her voice still weak. "Is he really okay?" "His vital signs are perfect. How many weeks are you?" 31 weeks. "So it's still early, but if necessary, we have an excellent neonatal intensive care unit here. But we'll do our best to keep this baby warm inside for a few more weeks, okay?" Mary Ann nodded, finally allowing herself to relax a little. She was safe. Her baby was safe. Everything still felt like a surreal nightmare, but at least the worst was over. Meanwhile, at the police station, Raphael and Sabrina were in separate interrogation rooms. Sabrina continued insisting that she had done nothing wrong, that Mary Ann deserved what happened, that she was the victim of a manipulative woman. But the investigators had the live stream, they had witnesses, they had everything they needed. In the next room, Raphael was silent. The detective inspector in front of him, Detective Inspector Fisher, watched him intently. "Do you want to tell us what happened, Raphael?" Raphael ran his hands over his face. "I was an idiot," he finally said. "Sabrina showed me messages. She said Mary Ann was cheating on me, that the baby wasn't mine. I was blinded by rage. I truly thought I was doing the right thing, exposing the truth." "And now? Do you still believe that?" Raphael shook his head. "No. Seeing Mary Ann like that, seeing what I did to her, I realized I was deceived. Sabrina manipulated me, but that doesn't excuse me. I tied my pregnant wife to a tree. I watched her suffer and did nothing to stop it." The detective inspector made notes. "The messages Sabrina showed you, do you still have them?" "She showed them on her phone but didn't send them to me. She said she would send them later but never did." The detective inspector nodded. "We'll need her phone then. And you'll need a lawyer, Raphael. What you both did is very serious." Raphael knew. He knew that his life, as he knew it, was over. And all because of lies and manipulation. He had destroyed everything with his own hands. Mrs. Alice Taylor rushed into Chesterfield General Hospital, her heart pounding. Her eyes were red from crying so much during the journey, and her legs trembled from exhaustion and tension. She ran to the reception desk, almost breathless. "My daughter, Mary Ann Smith, she's here. Where is she?" The receptionist, seeing the desperation etched on the older woman's face, quickly checked the system. "Third floor, obstetric ward, room 312. But you need authorization to go up." Before she could finish, Mrs. Alice Taylor was already running towards the elevators. A security guard stepped forward, but the receptionist gestured to let her go. She knew this was the mother who had alerted the police, the woman who had driven for hours to reach her daughter. When Mrs. Alice Taylor entered the room, she saw Mary Ann lying in the hospital bed, connected to monitors and IV drips. Her daughter looked small and fragile, so different from the strong, determined young woman she knew. Mary Ann turned her head at the sound of the door opening, and her eyes filled with tears upon seeing her mother. "Mum," she whispered, extending her arms. Mrs. Alice Taylor ran to the bed and hugged her daughter with utmost care, trying not to disconnect any of the machines. They both cried together, a cry of relief, of pain, of gratitude for being alive and together again. "I thought I was going to lose you," Mrs. Alice Taylor sobbed. "When I saw that video, when I saw what they were doing to you, I thought my heart would stop." "I knew you'd find me," Mary Ann said, gripping her mother's hand tightly. "I prayed you'd see the broadcast. I knew if anyone could save me, it would be you." They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, letting the other's presence heal some of the pain. Finally, Mrs. Alice Taylor pulled back enough to look her daughter in the eyes. "And the baby? How's my grandchild?" Mary Ann placed her hand on her belly. "He's fine, strong. The doctor said we managed to stabilize everything. He'll stay in here a little longer, growing and getting ready to meet Grandma." Mrs. Alice Taylor laughed through her tears, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Thank God, thank God." Dr. Carla Stone entered the room at that moment, checking her clipboard. "I see you found your mum, Mary Ann. That's good. Mrs. Alice Taylor, I presume." "Yes, that's me," Mrs. Alice Taylor replied, wiping her tears. "How is she, doctor, really? She went through a terrible ordeal, but she and the baby are fighters. The dehydration is being treated. The contractions have stopped completely, and all vital signs are normalizing. We'll keep her under observation for at least 48 hours, but I'm optimistic." Mary Ann closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the tension finally beginning to dissipate. She was safe, her baby was safe, and her mum was there. "Doctor," Mary Ann asked hesitantly, "the police said Raphael and Sabrina were arrested. Do you know anything else?" Dr. Carla Stone nodded. "The detective inspector in charge of the case stopped by an hour ago. He said he'd return to speak with you when you're feeling better, but he assured me they are both in custody and will not approach you." Mary Ann nodded, relieved. A part of her, a small and confused part, still felt something for Raphael. After all, she had spent 4 years with that man, had planned an entire life beside him, but predominantly she felt anger. Anger at the betrayal, at the violence, at him believing Sabrina instead of her. Meanwhile, at the police station, the investigation was progressing rapidly. Forensic specialist Julia Sanders, an expert in digital crimes, was examining Sabrina's cell phone specifically. The messages she claimed proved Mary Ann's betrayal. What they discovered was shocking, but not surprising. Detective Inspector Fisher called forensic specialist Julia Sanders. "The messages are fake, all of them." The detective inspector approached the table where she worked. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. She used an image editing application to create fake screenshots. She didn't even bother to do a convincing job." She pointed to details on the computer screen. "The timestamps don't make sense. The metadata is all wrong, and when we checked the victim's phone, Mary Ann Smith's, there's no record of these conversations. Not deleted, not archived. They simply never existed." Detective Inspector Fisher felt anger grow within him. So she fabricated everything, manipulated the victim's husband into participating in this madness, all based on lies. Exactly. And there's more. We found messages between her and Raphael in the weeks leading up to the incident. She had been planning this for a while, planting doubts in his mind, building the narrative gradually. The detective inspector picked up the report and went directly to the room where Sabrina was being interrogated. She was sitting with her arms crossed, a defiant expression on her face. Her lawyer, a young man who seemed more interested in his phone than his client, barely looked up when the detective inspector entered. "Sabrina Carter," the detective inspector began, placing the report on the table. "We've just analyzed your cell phone. The messages you showed Raphael, the ones that supposedly proved Mary Ann was cheating on him, are fake. You fabricated everything." Sabrina blinked, but said nothing. Her lawyer, however, finally paid attention. "Wait, what?" "Your client created false evidence to convince Raphael Andrews that his wife was having an affair. She then manipulated him into participating in a kidnapping, hand torture plan, all based on lies." Sabrina finally spoke, her voice tense. "I didn't fabricate anything. I saw those messages, I swear." "Where? Who showed them to you?" "Because they certainly didn't come from Mary Ann Smith's phone." Sabrina hesitated, realizing she had dug herself into an even deeper hole. I heard her talking on the phone with someone. It was clearly an affair. The detective inspector leaned over the table. You are digging your own grave, Sabrina. Every lie you tell only worsens your situation. The live stream, the fake messages, everything is documented. You planned this. You executed this. And now you will answer for it. Sabrina fell silent, but her eyes gleamed with anger. She showed no remorse, only anger at being caught. In another room, Raphael was receiving the same information. When the detective inspector showed him the forensics report, proving the messages were fake, Raphael felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. They were fake? Everything was a lie? Everything. Sabrina fabricated the evidence to manipulate you. Your wife never cheated on you, Raphael. The baby is yours. Raphael buried his face in his hands. He had destroyed everything. He had tied his pregnant wife to a tree, exposed her to public ridicule, put her and the baby in mortal danger, all because of lies. How could he forgive himself? How could Mary Ann ever forgive him? I need to see her, he said, his voice broken. I need to ask for forgiveness. The detective inspector shook his head. She has a temporary restraining order against you. You cannot approach her. But I didn't know. I was deceived. And you chose to believe the mistress instead of your wife. You chose to tie her up, Raphael. Those choices were yours. The detective inspector stood up. You will have to live with the consequences of that. Raphael remained alone in the room, the weight of guilt crushing him. He had lost everything, his wife, his child, his freedom, his dignity, and there was no turning back. At the hospital, Mary Ann was talking with Mrs. Alice Taylor about the future. Her mother had suggested that Mary Ann and the baby move in with her in Stafford after her discharge, at least until everything was settled. I don't want to run away, Mum, Mary Ann said with surprising determination. I want to stay here. I want to testify in court. I want them to pay for what they did. Both her and him. Mrs. Alice Taylor held her daughter's hand. I understand, my daughter, and I'll be by your side every step of the way. We'll fight together. Mary Ann nodded, feeling a new strength grow within her. She had survived the worst. Now it was time to seek justice. 3 months had passed since that terrible day in the forest. Mary Ann had given birth to a healthy baby girl, Beatrice, weighing 7 pounds in late March. The birth had been calm, and despite everything that had happened, the baby was born strong and perfect. Mrs. Alice Taylor was there, holding her daughter's hand throughout labor, and when Beatrice let out her first cry, both cried along. But now, on a cold June morning, Mary Ann was sitting in the Chesterfield Crown Court, holding Beatrice in her arms, waiting to testify in Raphael and Sabrina's trial. Mrs. Alice Taylor was by her side, offering silent but constant support. The case had gained enormous national repercussions. The live stream, seen by thousands of people in real time and later shared millions of times on social media, had shocked the country. Discussions about domestic violence, psychological manipulation, and the cruelty of public exposure dominated the news for weeks. Mary Ann Smith, called a court officer. Please come in. Mary Ann took a deep breath, handed Beatrice to her grandmother, and entered the courtroom. The room was packed. Journalists occupied half the seats, cameras were positioned in permitted areas, and curious onlookers filled the rest of the space. In the center, Raphael and Sabrina sat with their respective lawyers, handcuffed and wearing prison uniforms. It was the first time Mary Ann had seen Raphael since that day. He had lost considerable weight, had deep dark circles under his eyes, and when their eyes met, he quickly looked away, unable to sustain the contact. Sabrina, on the other hand, looked directly at Mary Ann with an expression that still carried defiance. The judge, Judge Frederick Chambers, a middle-aged man known for his impartiality and rigor, struck his gavel. Let the hearing begin. Prosecution, you may proceed. Prosecutor Ann P. Rogers stood up. She was a determined woman with years of experience in cases of violence against women and had taken on the case personally. Your Honor, this is one of the most disturbing cases I have ever had to prosecute. The defendants, Raphael Andrews and Sabrina Carter, kidnapped the victim. Mary Ann Smith, 7 months pregnant at the time, took her to an isolated area, tied her to a tree under temperatures of over 95 degrees Fahrenheit, left her without water, and live-streamed her humiliation for the world to watch. All this based on completely false accusations of betrayal fabricated by the defendant Sabrina Carter. She methodically presented evidence, the complete recording of the live stream, hours of documented psychological and physical torture. Then the forensics report showing that the messages were fake, testimonies from the police officers who arrived at the scene, medical reports detailing Mary Ann's condition when she was rescued. Mary Ann was called to testify. With her voice initially trembling, but gaining strength as she spoke, she recounted everything. The kidnapping, the fear, the physical pain, the humiliation of being exposed in that way, the terror of losing her baby. "I begged for water," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I begged for mercy. I told him, the man I had been married to for 4 years, that our baby was in danger, and he ignored me. Both of them ignored me. When I was rescued, doctors said that another hour, maybe 2, and I could have had irreversible complications. My baby could have been permanently affected." The room was in absolute silence. Even journalists accustomed to difficult stories were visibly moved. "How do you feel about the defendants today?" the prosecutor asked. Mary Ann wiped away her tears. "Regarding Sabrina, I feel anger. She fabricated lies, manipulated my husband, and coldly planned everything. She has shown no remorse to this day. As for Raphael," she looked at him directly, "I feel pity. Pity that he allowed himself to be manipulated so easily, that he chose to believe lies instead of trusting me. But that doesn't excuse him. He made choices, and those choices almost cost our baby's life." Raphael bowed his head, his shoulders trembling. He was crying. When it was Raphael's defense's turn, his lawyer tried to argue that he had been manipulated, that he was also a victim. Sabrina's lawyer, in turn, tried to minimize her actions, saying that she was in a relationship with Raphael, and that her actions, though extreme, came from a place of emotional pain. The prosecutor dismantled both arguments. "Raphael Andrews is an adult man who made conscious decisions. He tied his pregnant wife with his own hands. He watched her suffer and did nothing to stop it. As for Sabrina Carter, she premeditated everything. The fake messages took weeks to prepare. She planted doubts, manipulated, and executed the plan. No emotional pain justifies torture." Sabrina was called to testify. Unlike Raphael, she showed no remorse. "I loved Raphael," she said coldly, "and she was in the way. If she hadn't turned up pregnant saying the child was his, we would be together and happy." "So, you admit you fabricated the evidence?" the prosecutor asked. Sabrina hesitated. Her lawyer tried to intervene, but she ignored him. "I did what I had to do to open his eyes. Mary Ann was a liar, a manipulator." The entire court was shocked by her lack of empathy or remorse. The judge intervened. "Ms. Carter, are you aware that your confession only strengthens the case against you?" Sabrina didn't respond, but her face was red with contained anger. Raphael also testified. Unlike Sabrina, he was visibly shattered. "I have no excuses," he said, his voice choked. "I was a coward. I believed lies because it was easier than facing the truth that I was cheating on my wife. I projected my guilt onto her, and I almost lost everything because of it." He looked at Mary Ann. "I know I don't have the right to ask for forgiveness, but I deeply regret it. Every day in prison I think of Beatrice, my daughter, whom I will never know, and I know this is a consequence of my choices." Mary Ann felt a pang of pain hearing him. But it wasn't enough. Words could not erase what he had done. After hours of deliberation, the judge finally delivered his sentence. "Raphael Andrews, you are convicted of kidnapping, torture, endangering the life of another, and defamation. Including all aggravating circumstances, the sentence is 40 years of imprisonment in a maximum security facility." A murmur ran through the room. 40 years was a heavy sentence, but few disagreed. "Sabrina Carter, you are convicted of the same crimes, with the aggravating circumstance of having planned and executed the fabrication of false evidence. The sentence is 25 years of imprisonment in a maximum security facility. Sabrina stood up abruptly. This is unfair. I'm the victim here. Sit down, the judge ordered coldly. The session is adjourned. Marianne left the courthouse feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Mrs. Alice Taylor was waiting outside with Beatrice. The baby was sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the drama unfolding around her. It's over, my daughter, Mrs. Alice Taylor said, hugging Marianne. Justice has been served. Marianne looked at her daughter, so small and innocent. Yes, she said softly. Now we can start anew. 6 months after the trial, Marianne was standing in front of a newly renovated building in the centre of Chesterfield. The facade, which was once grey and worn, was now painted in shades of yellow and white, conveying warmth and hope. A large sign at the entrance read, Sunshine Foundation, Shelter for Women Victims of Violence. Mrs. Alice Taylor was by her side, holding Beatrice, who was now 9 months old and increasingly alert, babbling and smiling at everyone around. Around them was a small group of people, community members, journalists who had covered the case from the beginning, city council representatives, and mainly women. Women who, like Marianne, had survived situations of violence and abuse. The idea for the foundation had emerged during Beatrice's pregnancy, when Marianne was recovering in the hospital. A psychologist attending to her had commented on the lack of resources in the region for women in vulnerable situations. Marianne, still processing her own trauma, thought, if I manage to survive, I want to help other women do the same. With the support of Mrs. Alice Taylor, who sold her house in Stafford and moved permanently to Chesterfield to help her daughter, Marianne began working on the project. She used part of the compensation she received from Raphael, organized fundraising campaigns, and secured support from local business owners touched by her story. The result was there, in that 3-story building that would offer temporary shelter, psychological support, legal assistance, and professional training for women who needed to rebuild their lives after situations of violence. Marianne held a microphone looking at the assembled people. She still felt nervous speaking in public, but knew she had to do this. Her story had power, and she wanted to use it for good. Good morning, everyone, she began, her voice firm despite her nerves. My name is Marianne Smith, and less than a year ago I was tied to a tree, 7 months pregnant, fighting for my life and my daughter's life. Today I am here, free, healthy, and beside this beautiful baby, she smiled, looking at Beatrice, to inaugurate a space that I hope will help other women find the same strength I found. Some people in the audience had tears in their eyes. Marianne's story had deeply touched many hearts. This shelter is not just a place to sleep or hide, Marianne continued. It's a place to be reborn. Here, women will find lawyers who will help them obtain protection orders, divorce abusive partners, and gain custody of their children. They will find psychologists who will help them process trauma and rebuild their self-esteem. They will find teachers who will teach them new skills so they can support themselves independently. Marianne paused, looking directly at some of the women present whom she knew were going through difficult situations. And most importantly, they will find other women. They will discover that they are not alone, that what happened to them was not their fault, and that there is hope for a better future. A young woman in the audience, no more than 20 years old, timidly raised her hand. Marianne gestured for her to speak. Are you afraid, the young woman asked, that he might get out of prison someday and come after you? Marianne considered the question honestly. Yes, I am, she admitted. I won't lie and say I've completely overcome everything. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still get startled when I see a silver pickup truck on the street. But I've learned that fear cannot paralyze me. Fear can make me more cautious, more prepared, but it cannot stop me from living. She looked at Beatrice, who was trying to grab one of Mrs. Alice Taylor's earrings. I have a daughter now. She needs to see that her mother is strong, that she didn't let herself be destroyed by what happened. I want her to grow up knowing that there's always a way to overcome, always a light at the end of the tunnel. The mayor of Chesterfield, who was present, stepped onto the small makeshift platform. On behalf of the city, I want to thank Marianne and Mrs. Alice Taylor for this initiative. The Sunshine Foundation will fill a critical gap in our social services, and I am certain it will save lives. After the speeches, Mary Ann cut the inaugural ribbon. The shelter's doors opened and everyone was invited to tour the facilities. There were cozy rooms, a daycare so mothers could leave their children while working or studying, a group therapy room, a small but well-stocked library, and a communal kitchen. An older woman, whom Mary Ann recognized as one of the neighbors from the house where she lived with Raphael, approached timidly. "Mary Ann, I wanted to apologize," she said, her voice choked. "That day when they took you, I saw you being put in the pickup truck. I saw something was wrong, but I didn't do anything. I was scared. I thought it wasn't my business. I'm so sorry." Mary Ann hugged the woman. "Mrs. Celia, don't blame yourself. No one could have imagined that would happen. The important thing is that we are here now trying to make a difference." At the end of the day, after all the visitors had left, Mary Ann, Mrs. Alice Taylor, and Beatrice were left alone in the shelter. They walked through the silent corridors, imagining the women who would soon fill that space with their stories, their pains, but also their hopes. "You've built something incredible, my daughter," Mrs. Alice Taylor said, putting her arm around Mary Ann's shoulders. "From the deepest pain, you've brought forth something beautiful and useful. I'm so proud of you." Mary Ann rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "I wouldn't have made it without you, Mum. You saved my life that day, and every day since then." They left the building together, Mary Ann pushing Beatrice's stroller, who had finally fallen asleep. The sun was setting over Chesterfield, painting the sky orange and pink. It was a beautiful sunset, promising a new day ahead. Mary Ann looked back one last time, seeing the Sunshine Foundation sign illuminated. That was her legacy, not the violence she suffered, not the humiliation she endured, but this, a place of healing, of hope, of new beginnings. A year ago she was tied to a tree, certain she would lose everything. Today she was free, with her healthy daughter in her arms, beside the mother she loved, about to open the doors of a shelter that could save dozens, perhaps hundreds of women. The journey hadn't been easy. There were scars, physical and emotional, that might never completely disappear. But there was also strength, resilience, and a renewed purpose. "Shall we go home?" Mrs. Alice Taylor asked. Mary Ann smiled. "Let's go." And together, mother, daughter, and granddaughter, they walked towards the future they had built with courage, determination, and love. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Mary Ann, Mrs. Alice Taylor, and little Beatrice has touched your hearts. This journey of pain, overcoming, and rebirth reminds us that even in the darkest moments there is always a possibility of light. If this narrative resonated with you, be sure to subscribe to our channel to follow more equally emotional and inspiring stories. Hit the like button on this video and share in the comments. Which part of the story touched you the most? Do you know anyone who needs to hear Mary Ann's message of hope? Every day we bring stories that explore the complexity of life, the strength of the human spirit, and the ability to transform tragedy into purpose. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to reading your comments and continuing this emotional journey together. Until the next story.